I know it may seem a little bit early for Christmas, but if you craft, whether for yourself or to sell, you know that you have to get it done ahead of time. And there is something really nice about getting everything done so that when the season hits, you can just sit back, relax, and enjoy it. We're gonna get started with our Christmas crafting season with some of my favorite DIYs from the last couple of years. I hope that you enjoyed this compilation video. Let's get into it. We're going to start off with an 8x10 flat canvas. This is just one of those flat ones without the frame in it, but you could use one with a frame. But this is what I had on hand, so this is what I'm going to use. We're going to take the plastic off, and I'm going to give it a coat of this really pretty light blue paint. I've told you before, I'm just trying to use what I have on hand in my stash, so use something that, you have or that fits with your decor style. I like to share a variety of decor styles in my DIYs, or DIY styles rather, because I think it's important. Some people are naturally creative and can just say, oh, I can do this, but change it up to fit my style. But other people really need the ideas. And so you can change this up to fit your color, your style. You could make it more whimsical. You could make it less whimsical. But this is what I'm doing for this one. So we gave that a really good coat of that blue paint. And then I have this craft kit from Dollar General. I bought it last year, which means I know for sure that I got it marked down, so I didn't pay the dollar that was on there. But Dollar General, Dollar Tree, and lots of Hobby Lobby, there's all sorts of these little craft kits. And I generally think of these types of things as great little kits for kids, and I think they are, but I was like, how can I take this and, I don't know, use it for like a more substantial decor piece? So that's what we're doing today. You can find these, like I said, in lots of stores, or do what I do and buy them at the end of the year when everything is marked down. So we're going to just paint all the pieces. We're using everything in this one except for the stand, and we're going to just paint it however I want. Paint it however you want. I wasn't sure I was going to use a candy cane, but I didn't end up using it. Just use small paintbrushes where needed in order to get into all of the itty bitty places. And then for colors, I kind of just looked at some images online to kind of get my wheels turning of like what I wanted to do. What the mittens, the scarf. Anyway, there's a lot of flexibility. Do with that however, whatever you would like to do for the details and colors that you want to do. And if you need ideas, just look online, look on Pinterest for some inspiration. I did add a little detail in using this white puffy paint or fabric paint. I don't know what this one is called, but you can get this at the Dollar Tree. And I just added a little fur piece to the end of the mittens. Obviously, it's not fur, but I think get what I'm saying. I'm going to use some Gorilla Glue to adhere this all together. I'm just spreading it out with my finger. You could use a paintbrush or, something else because I didn't want it oozing out of the sides. And just be careful to, like I said, not have anything oozing out, not put down too much glue, and then also be careful when you place it down. I had a couple little oopsies placing it down and then it moved. But I always choose a glue that dries clear so that if I do have to do some cleanup, but something occurs, it's easy enough to clean up. Because my candy cane moved around here a little bit and I had to clean up the mitten. But then once that's all in place, just let that fully dry. Now we're going to put this together, and placing this on the canvas, I just felt like putting it in the middle seemed weird. So I put it down at the bottom using more of this Gorilla Glue. And like I said, just kind of spreading it out on those edge pieces so that we didn't have any glue oozing out. And then this is where I accidentally dropped it and I had to clean up some of the glue, but you can't even tell. I was like, I'm going to clean it up, and if I have to, I'll go back and touch up the paint, but you couldn't even tell that it happened. So I thought this was pretty good. I let that dry, and I thought about leaving it there, but then I was like, no, I feel like it needs something else. So I had this Let It Snow decal that a friend gave to me, and then I also had these white snowflake stickers from the Dollar Tree. I decided to go that route and save the Let It Snow for something else because I just felt like this was a little bit more whimsical and playful. They are stickers, but I've had them in my stash for probably a couple of years. So I'm adding in just a little bit of that regular white glue, school glue on the back to help them stick a little bit. And I love how this came out. I put it in a little easel, but you could also place this inside of a frame if you wanted. Just be careful where you place everything so that it can fit in the frame. But I think it looks adorable on the easel. Let me know what you think about this one. Now I wanted to make a little something to go along with our last DIY. So I have these scrap pieces of wood in my stash, and I am just going to give them a paint of that same, a coat of the paint of that same blue that I used for the last DIY. And I didn't want to pull the paint out onto like a palette or a plate or something. So that's why I did it this way. But we're going to give it a couple of coats. I didn't even sand these down, and they are a little bit rough in some edges, but it looks great. So, make it as perfect or not as you want. I did the sides, the top, and the bottom, and I think I ended up doing, maybe I don't know if I did 1 or 2 coats, but you're just going to do whatever you need to do. And then let them fully dry. And I have these white stickers. I believe they are from Hobby Lobby that I picked up on clearance. And but Dollar Tree has some stickers, and you can also stencil them on. You could use a Cricut. And I thought it'd be really cute to just put Frosty on here. I thought that looked really cute with the snowman. Sorry, I think I keep saying I'll really notice when I play back the voiceover, but I apologize. So we're going to put that on there. And then I was talking with a friend of mine, and she suggested that, and I love this, I'm adding some Mod Podge and I'm doing some fake snow to make it look a little sparkly. Now this is some I had mixed up from last year, so it's a combination of faux snow and Epsom salt. And I did realize that as I went along that I needed to put a larger amount of Mod Podge, just kind of gob it on. And I put it across the top and on the top corners and along the sides, and I just kind of tap that in and let that fully dry. So that was a really fun addition, and I love how these little blocks came out. I think they're super pretty and fun, and paired with this sign makes for a really nice little whimsical display. And this is something that could be out all winter long if you are in a place where you like to have winter stuff out all winter long. But let me know what you think of this little set. Up next, this one is super easy, guys. This sign is from Dollar Tree. And these letters, this is from Target Dollar Spot, originally $3, but if you could see that sticker there, I got it at a thrift store for 99 cents. So we're really just going to assemble this, but I did want to add a couple little things here. So these stickers are pretty sticky, so I did end up having to move them, and thankfully it worked pretty good. I thought that S was upside down, so I reversed it, and I think I made the right call. But I was trying to center this, but you can't always count the number of letters and center it that way because not all letters are the same size. Anyways, we were able to fix it. But if you do not have this exact thing, Hobby Lobby has very similar sets, or you could just use some wood letter pieces and paint them as well. So even if you don't have all of these exact pieces, there's still ways for you to recreate it. But I had a lot of fun with this, and I was like, you know what? Not all DIYs have to be complicated. Some DIYs can just be quick and simple. But I did want to add one little thing. So I wanted to make a bow, and I like this ribbon, but I needed something way thinner. So I'm going to start by cutting off the wired edge of the ribbon. I've done that many times. Now this is going to be a very frayed ribbon because that is what happens when you cut it, but I didn't care. So I ended up cutting it in fourths, and I think I just used 2 of those strips. But you might not have to do that at all if you have a thinner ribbon. But as I said, use what you have on hand. So I'm just going to crisscross this and fold this down into a bow, and I'm actually going to use some of the wired part of the ribbon that I had cut off and just kind of twist that on and zhuzh it up as much as you can zhuzh up a little tiny bow. Twist that nice and tight, and then I'm going to trim it down. Now, as you can see, this ribbon is fraying. So I'm just trimming off what I can without going too crazy, because it probably will keep fraying if I were to mess with it. But I don't mind. I like this look. So I'm just giving it a little bit of a haircut, trimming it up, and we're going to add just a little bit of hot glue and add this to the opposite side of where the little ornament piece was. But there's so many ways where you can, so many different ways for you to make this same sign. Let me know what you guys think about this and how you might recreate it with items that you have on hand. There's lots of little embellishment pieces at the Dollar Tree and Hobby Lobby, probably other craft stores too. I just don't get to any other ones, so those are the ones I typically mention. For this next DIY, I have this wood house, I believe was from the Dollar General, and I'm just kind of showing you what I did. I took everything off. You take off the roof, and I usually use my heat gun to help soften the glue up and then pry it up. And then I took off the paper from this house. You can sand it. You can take a damp cloth, like a damp paper towel, let it sit on there, soak through, and then scrape it off, which is what I did here. And there's still some on there, but it's plenty smooth. So now I'm going to apply a really thick coat of Mod Podge, and we're going to use the scrap piece of paper, which I probably came from Hobby Lobby, but it's just a little scrap piece. And I'm going to press that on. I didn't do the iron-on method here. This is a really thick piece of cardstock, so it doesn't wrinkle. My body got in the way here, but I was trimming it up around the chimney because I was not going to be able to sand it because the chimney was in the way. So I'm using a sanding block to sand the other edges, but around the chimney, I trimmed it down, and I was okay with it even leaving some of the spot exposed because we're going to put our roof piece back on. But just a little tip here, these little emery boards, you want like a stiffer emery board, but it's great at sanding in little small spaces. So we are going to trim off all of the excess paper that way. And then just because of all the sanding and all of that, I did need to touch up the roof. Well, not the roof, the chimney and then the roof pieces. So I just gave them a quick coat of black paint. If you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Leanne, and I enjoy sharing budget-friendly DIYs here on this channel. I'd love it if you would consider subscribing before you leave. Now, in my stash, I found this little wreath. It came off of something that I had previously DIY'd, and I had saved it. The bow looked a little obnoxiously big for the wreath, so I used my heat gun to soften up the glue. I will save that bow for the future, and I'm going to use the wreath, and I'm going to trim down some of that ribbon that we used really tiny and make an itty bitty bow. Now, not the easiest thing because this ribbon started fraying and falling apart on me, but in the end, it did work. Now, if you don't have an old little wreath lying around, use those little garland ties. They tend to be a little bit more fluffy and fuzzy, so you might have to trim them down. But that's a way that I usually do make a wreath, and you can make one of any size. Well, not any size, but a wide range of sizes. And that was all I did for our little wreath. We're going to put it all back together. We're going to just attach with some hot glue our roof pieces and our wreath. This one is really simple. Sometimes I like DIYs that have a little bit more detail and more depth, and sometimes you just want a little simple piece to kind of be a filler. This would be great on a tiered tray, or I'm going to show you it paired with the other item we made, although the other item we made does have a hanger on it, so it could be hung up, but I could also be just used as a leaner sign. But here is that little house, and I love how that little bow came out on the wreath. I think it's really cute, little shaggy thing. And then I just wanted to show you the colors. It matched really good with this, so if you didn't want to hang that sign, like I said, it's nice to have some plain simple pieces without words to go along with your other stuff. For this next DIY, we're going to be using a little mini wreath form from Dollar Tree. They come in a 2-pack, and I have some ribbon in my stash. I don't keep a lot of it, but my mom was given some by somebody, I think from her church, and she wasn't going to use it all. So she's like, hey, do you want some? And I'm pretty sure that's where this ribbon came from. So I pulled out 4 coordinating colors, and I saw a wreath somewhere that had these little strips. I think it was just fabric, but I thought I could use the ribbon. And I thought it looked better wrapped around twice, just so that it wasn't sheer. And I'm just using a little bit of hot glue at the beginning and the end, and I am using finger protectors because otherwise I probably would have gotten burned. And I just wrapped each piece of ribbon around twice, overlapping it just a little bit and pulling it tight so it kind of curves with the wreath. And I just chose a pattern that I thought looked really, really good. And actually, when I picked these ribbons out from that stash that I got to look through, I specifically chose ones that I thought would go together. I didn't have this particular DIY in mind, but I did try to pick out some that would go really well together. So that is all. Well, that's not all we're going to do, but we're just going to repeat this, wrapping it, alternating colors until we make our way all the way around. And you could use, like I said, scraps of fabric. You could use scraps of like felt. There's all sorts of things you can use. A scarf from the Dollar Tree or an old scarf. Many, many different things you can use. But I had ribbon on hand, and so that is what I used. As I told you, we're doing budget-friendly DIYs using what we have. I had a little gap at the top, and so I'm going to just thread in some twine for our little hanger. I'm just using like where you have the loop and you pull the ends through it. That will help it hang up straight when you want to hang this. And then I just put a little knot at the top. So super simple hanger here. You could also use some like floral wire or something like that. And then I wanted to cover up that little gap plus add some embellishment here. So I've had this raffia. I believe this came from Dollar Tree. They all came together, these 3 colors. So I picked out a few strands of each color and I thought I really liked the idea of using all of them. So I just kind of gathered them, straightened them up in my hand, and I didn't do a crazy bow. I just kind of folded it where the loops would be and then tied a little piece of raffia, not tied, I wrapped a little piece of raffia around the middle and then glued it. Now, and then I'm going to glue this onto the top. This is a little bit of a more messy bow. There's some loops, some like straggler straight pieces, and you just do it however you like. If you want a more polished bow, then by all means you can do that. But I am going to trim it up a little bit, but it's still going to be a more messy, shabby chic bow. And then we're going to go ahead and move on to the center of this wreath. This is a wood plank from the Dollar Tree. They come in like a 6-pack, I think. I had previously painted it gold, but that's not what I wanted here. So we're going to give this a good coat of black paint. I'm just using an acrylic paint by HTV Rond. Now, originally in my mind, before trying this out and seeing the size, I thought about putting the plank in the front, but it definitely looked better in the back. So I just got that placed so that the bow's on top and the plank was straight across. And I just held it in place and lifted one side up and applied some hot glue. Then my arm got in the way of the camera. But we're just going to put a good amount of glue on either end and hold that down until it attaches to the back. And with the ribbon there, there's plenty of surface for it to attach. Once that is good and held, I've got this craft glue that I had and this Joy metal word. This is from Dollar Tree. It comes in a 3-pack with other words. And this is just some glue I had on hand and I was having trouble with the nozzle. So we're just spreading it on with a wooden skewer. And just trying to find something that, again, isn't going to be seen if it comes out the edge. And I thought this was a great way to attach this to the center of the wreath. I'm holding that wooden skewer in my mouth, but not the end that has glue. So don't worry, but that's why that was hanging out in the camera shot. And some of it did kind of leak out, so I just held it down, wiped it down with a damp paper towel, and then went over it, kind of dabbing it with a dry paper towel, and all is good. You couldn't even tell. And I didn't have any place to hang this up to show you guys, but this is how the little wreath came out. I love it. Let me know, where do you hang little wreaths? I always love seeing them in the store. And I know you can hang them on like your kitchen cabinet doors, or you could hang them inside of a larger piece, maybe on your front door, or on maybe like a peg, like a shelf with pegs underneath. I don't know. Let me know how you like to display your mini wreaths. All right, so first up, I have this sign. I don't know if this is the one that someone gave to me or I picked up, but I'm pretty sure this is from Aldi, and I picked up plenty of them when they're on sale at the end of the season. And we're just going to sand down one side. I'm just sanding it down to rough it up to make the paint adhere a little bit better. I'm going to clean that with a baby wipe, and it didn't really affect the writing at all, but we're still going to get fine coverage with painting it. But we're going to give this a good coat of white paint. I'm going in, my head's in the way a lot, but I'm going in with a small angled brush, even though I did tape off the frame because I really liked the color of that. And then I go in with a thicker brush for the second coat to just so that I didn't have like all of the brush strokes. But just keep in mind, you can use any sign, whether it's something in your own home decor that you've had for a while and it's just not your style anymore. Instead of donating it, you can make it over, or something you pick up on clearance or at a thrift store or whatever. I guess I was using the end of the paint jar for this one. So we're going to give that a couple coats until we just can't see the writing anymore. And then I have these little ornaments. These are from Hobby Lobby, but Dollar Tree and Dollar General has versions of these, but great deal. Christmas stuff is at least 50% off at Hobby Lobby. And I'm just using a baby wipe and some antique wax to stain this. You can also do like a watered down brown paint to make kind of like a faux stain, or you can just paint it. You can paint it any color. Maybe if you painted your background a little bit of a different color, you would want to paint this white or black or something like that. But we're just going to use a baby wipe and stain it. And you just kind of, oh, see, I broke it. These ones are pretty fragile, but we're going to put it back together. I was looking at another one to see like, where did that piece come from? But depending on how dark you want it, depends on how long you let that antique wax stay on before you wipe it off. And then I'm just going to reattach with some super glue gel, pull off of my painter's tape, and we have some Nice clean lines, did not get any, well, I pulled off a little paint there. I'm going to touch it up if you can kind of see that, but I had no paint whatsoever on my frame. And now we're going to attach this, but I also have this little decal. A friend gave this to me. I don't have a Cricut, but you maybe have a friend that has one, or you can order some off of like Etsy, or you can use a stamp or a stencil or freehand it. There's so many ways of getting wording on your pieces, but I have this, so I used it and I thought it was perfect for this DIY. Oh, come let us adore him. I love that song. And we're just going to apply that very carefully. This was one of my first times using decals. I didn't really know what I was doing here, but it worked no problem. And then I'm using some super glue gel or any glue that you can get on in the little places. I didn't want to use hot glue because I figured it would end up coming out the edges because this has so many intricate parts to it. So whatever glue you have, but the super glue gel has a nice tip, and I do prefer super glue gel over super glue because super glue inevitably always leaks and I glue myself to something, and I don't like to do that. So we're going to get that in place, and that is it for this one. Let me know what you think about it. I love this. I like the simplicity of the colors. I do like colors in my Christmas decor, but sometimes it's nice to have something a little bit more muted, and I really enjoy this. So let me know what you think down below. We're pulling out the good, tried and true tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree and some wood glue, super glue. This is from the Dollar Tree as well. I mean, you might be able to get it other places, but I got them from the Dollar Tree. So we are going to glue together two blocks end to end several times, and then we're going to piece it all together. We did 1, 2, 5 all together. Sorry, should have that just like written down in front of me, but you know. Okay, so we're going to do 5 of those. Now, the thing is, I'm just wiping that off with my finger. I will say this, that any extra glue will make it harder for glue or I'm sorry, paint or stain to attach to the wood later. So I definitely had like too much glue, but I wanted it to hold really good. And I did let these dry for a good amount of time. I thought this would be better than using hot glue because hot glue tends to be chunky and can cause more of a separation between the pieces. So just keep that in mind. Hot glue would hold them together just fine, but I just don't think it would have as seamless of a look. So now we're going to go ahead and piece all of these together. We're building ourselves a little nativity, a little stable. That's probably the better part to say because I guess the nativity, would the nativity be like the whole scene? I don't know. I feel like I should know that. But we're going to build for a little frame here. And we're just doing the roof. The hard part about the roof here is I am able to put one end on the other. You see they're kind of like, in order to get our peak, they're like a little bit not like centered because I wanted it flush on top. But then on the sides, you really only have the edge for the glue to stick. And so I wasn't sure how that would work, but it did. I just kind of attached it and then let it be and walked away and let it just fully dry. Once it was, we're coming back to paint it. I am using some watered down brown paint. I'm trying to use up all my paint. You can see this paint it started out a little chunky, but I smoothed it out when I worked in some water. And I'm doing that to be more like a faux stain, and I'm brushing that on, and then you can wipe it off. And once again, depending on how long you're going to leave that on, depends on how dark it is, depending on how much you water it down. I just thought the paint would adhere a little bit better than the antique wax because there was, even though I wiped off the glue, there was a little bit of that residue. So I'm painting all of the sides under, you know, all the little nooks and crannies there up by the roof line, and we have ourselves a stable. Now I'm using a scrap piece of fabric. I don't know, is this muslin fabric? I don't know. It's like a gauzy fabric. You could also use like a flexible piece of burlap or really any white linen that you had or anything along those lines. But we're swaddling baby Jesus. Baby Jesus is represented here only with a head, but that's okay because the swaddle is going to create the rest of the body. So I'm just taking a small bead. I did put the openings of the bead on either side because I knew that they would be covered up so you wouldn't be seeing the holes because we don't want holes in baby Jesus' head. That's not right. And then I just kind of cut down this fabric and rolled it and just kind of kept working. I didn't show you all of it because I didn't want to, make it drag it out for you, but I just wanted to see, just kind of fold it and roll it and work with it until you have the shape that you, or not the shape you want. I was going to say the shape that you want, but everyone wants the same shape here. But just work with it until you get it. Use a little bit of glue here and there to hold it together as you roll it. And I did put a little bit of glue on the sides of the bead to hold it so that it was kind of wrapped around the head. So you, I think, can understand what I'm saying here. Be careful to not burn yourself. And then I just kind of tucked in some of the frayed edges. You don't have to have it like perfect, and like the frayed edges aren't wrong. I mean, I'm sure it was not hemmed edges in the stable. So I just was trying to clean it up a little bit because of how we're going to be placing this in the nativity, or into the manger. No, not the manger, the stable. I'm really sorry, guys. I'm having a hard time with my words. All right, so we have our swaddled baby Jesus, and I'm going to take some Spanish moss. I really like this one because it's brown, and I did see this, some idea like this somewhere. I don't remember where. I didn't follow any instructions from somebody else, but I remember seeing an image and was like, ooh, I thought that looks fun. I don't know if they used Jingle Blocks or if it was from a store. I don't honestly know. But I just piled in some hot glue, and I did use my finger protectors here because the hot glue, is going to go, well, actually, there, I was using my fingers. I didn't have the finger protectors. Anyways, we're making a little bed to be the manger, and then we're putting some hot glue on the back of the swaddled baby Jesus and carefully placing that inside. So there's no Mary or Joseph in this one, or animals. We're just going to do the manger with baby Jesus. We are going to add 2 more elements, though. I'm going to just fill in a little bit of that moss in different places. I was just trying to figure out how to build it up because there is no construct, like no frame for the moss. And, the moss is pretty wild and pretty messy. So I just kind of kept building it. And then I have this wooden angel. They have like these plastic angel wings, but a wood body. This came in a pack from the Dollar Tree. Super great. I didn't paint it, stain it. I didn't want to mess up the wings at all. So I just decided to go with the more natural color for our angel. And I just hot glued that at a spot that I thought looked good and that had good contact. And then I had this wood star just in my stash. And so I'm going to glue that on once again. I didn't paint it. I liked the colors of this, but you could certainly put like a gold star, make it your own to however you like it, but very simple. And I love this sweet little scene recognizing the birth of Jesus, and it's simple, but I really like it. So let me know what you think about this one. Up next, I have this sign. I think it was from, yeah, that's a Dollar General sticker, and I know I got it when it was marked down. So they often have their seasonal stuff for like 75 or even 90% off. So I may have gotten that for 10 cents. I don't know. But I used my heat gun to get the sticker off and to loosen up this hot glue here where this little embellishment was added. Just warmed that up a little bit and peeled it right off. But that's just a little tip, helpful hint if you're going to make over a piece. And then I did take it out to my garage and sanded it down completely. Now, sanding it down is a good idea. If you don't have a sander, you could sand it down partially just with like a hand sander, like a sanding block. And even if it's not cleaned up completely, that helps a lot for the paint to adhere and to get better coverage. Also, you could, if it's just paper, take a damp paper towel and let it sit on there, and then you can peel it off. So I gave that a good coat of black paint, and then I pulled out some wood letters from my stash, and we're going to paint these. This is going to be a very simple sign, very simple colors. I'm using painter's tape to hold them down. This helps a lot. I tried to get the edges of the letters a little bit, but not like over the top. So I'm just going to put Oh Holy Night. We're going to give this, I think I just did 1 coat of white paint. And yeah, I think that's all I did. We're going to do just this one in just black and white. Black and gold would be really pretty, or even white and gold, like a white background, gold letters, whatever you want to do. I'm pulling these off of the tape once they were pretty dry, but just to make sure there was no like gobs of paint anywhere near the edges that can mess up my sign, I just dabbed the back onto a paper towel to make sure. And then we're going to get these in place, and I thought the best way to glue these on would be using some wood glue and a paintbrush. Once again, because hot glue on certain things, it just adds too much bulk. So I didn't want to do that. And I didn't want any glue to be oozing out. So I painted it on with a paintbrush. But there's a lot of different glues that you can use. I don't want to overcomplicate or belabor this part of it, but I did want to show you how I did it in case you wanted to give that a try. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Leanne and I enjoy sharing budget-friendly DIYs here on this channel. I would love it if you would consider subscribing to my channel before you leave and turn on your notification bell so you don't miss out on my future DIYs. That is all I did for this sign, but I really like it. It's simple, but I do like to have lyrics from songs or phrases that remind me of the true meaning of Christmas. So I have these nativity ornaments from Hobby Lobby. This is one I previously used, but I'm going to repurpose it. So I did start by cutting off the star, and I was not filming. I thought I was. And then the sign, or the house sign underneath that, was one from Dollar Tree that I just sanded down and cleaned it up so that I had a fresh slate. And these little pieces from Hobby Lobby are a little fragile. We're going to use the reverse side that I hadn't already painted, and it broke, but it's okay. It's okay. I promise you, don't give up on your projects. I felt like cutting it was going to make it even more fragile, so I just sanded it down to fit on here, trimmed down the edges, and I just took my time on that. But you can take whatever you've got and make it work. That's the message I'm trying to put out here. We're going to give this a couple coats. Actually, I think just one coat of white paint, but I had to redo it this first coat so I guess it ended up being 2 coats. I was at the end of my acrylic paint bottle, which is great. I was trying to use it up, but I had to go back in with some Waverly chalk paint because it was not going on smoothly. So here it is, all smooth, but I did get a little bit of paint on the edges, and I did not want to paint the edges because I just liked that look. It's just an MDF, but I like that contrasting color. So I'm using my finger sander on the sides to just clean up any paint that had dried over the edges, and that was a super easy way to clean that up. So I thought I would share that with you. And then one side had a lot of like ridges. I think it's the side that I had first done it with acrylic paint. So I just smoothed it out with my sandpaper as well. You can see all the little paint dust. All right, so for this, now I know maybe it seems like, well, why didn't you just use the other side? You're just staining it again. Well, I had a reason for that, and I'm not sure what it was. I don't know. But it doesn't matter. You probably won't be in the same exact scenario, so do it however you want. I am using some antique wax, brushing this on, and then if you want it darker, put it on thicker and let it dry. If you want it lighter, you can dab it off as you go with either a paper towel or a baby wipe. But we're just going to stain this piece, and then we're going to attach this with some Gorilla household glue. And once again, I'm just going to use a paintbrush to put this on. These pieces have all of these little intricate details, and I didn't want any glue coming out of all of those little cutouts. So this is how I thought it was best to do it, but that's obviously completely optional. Once we have a good amount of glue on there, we're going to flip that over and place this down and hold that in place. The glue takes a little while to set, but if you hold it down for just a little while, look at the directions on your glue. I held it down for a minute just to make sure it really stuck. And then I'm just going to do the same with the piece that broke off, adding a little bit of glue, and then we're going to nestle it right in there, put a little bit on the places where it attaches, and in the end, you cannot even tell. So just keep going with a project, even if things seem like they're not working. Just keep going with it. Most of the time, any mistakes can be resolved and fixed. Another simple one here. As you can see, I went with a lot of neutrals for these projects, but I really enjoyed that look, and I feel like the simplicity just lets the nativity and the message of the projects shine a little more. This here is a sign that I picked up from Dollar Tree Plus. It was originally $5, and I know I got it off after the season, so I probably paid $2.50 for it. And I love, in case you have not noticed that, finding signs that I can repurpose. So I liked a lot of these elements. I apologize for the lighting. If you've missed some of my previous videos, I am in the process of moving. So I'm using a makeshift, I was showing you there that the carrot, I thought, oh, I could turn these into some Christmas trees. So they're going to be saved in my stash. But I'm currently crafting in a makeshift area at my parents' house so that I can continue crafting while in the process of moving. So my lighting isn't, you know, as good as it could be, but I hope you can bear with me. So I just carefully cut the twine that was attaching the carrots. And then I have these acrylic ornaments from HTV Run. I got them last year, and I've done so many DIYs with them. And we're going to use these black stickers from the Dollar Tree. So this is a largely Dollar Tree DIY, minus the HTV Run ornaments. I almost picked that sticker off because I wanted it moved just slightly, but I could tell I was going to ruin it, so I just left it. Just left it. But this is once again me just using what I have in my stash. So if you don't have those acrylic ornaments, although I do love them, find something else. You could cut out something out of like cardstock, would also totally work for this. And we're just going to tie these ornaments back on similarly to how the carrots were. I had to figure out my own spacing with the beads because these lay differently than the like cardboard carrots or MDF carrots, whatever they were. And so I'm just going to tie them on in the proper spacing that I need. We're going to write out a door, and then we're going to come back and embellish this a little bit more. If you are enjoying this video, I just wanted to ask that you would give this video a thumbs up. That helps out my channel more than you may know, and it lets YouTube know that you're enjoying my video and makes it more likely to share it with someone else. Okay, so this 3D craft kit I think might have come from Dollar General, but so many stores have things that are similar. We are going to trim this down to fit on our sign and make a little scene. So I'm very carefully cutting these. My scissors did a fine job cutting them. Sorry, I kind of forgot and went out of frame here. I was very focused on trying to not crack the piece at all. So I'm going slow, not because it was hard to cut, but because I just wanted to be cautious with it. And so I think I can make this work on this little sign. And so I'm going to trim it down, wanting it to still look like the stable, but not wanting, so like I needed to trim it down, but I didn't want to take off too much that was going to alter, so that it still looked like it needed to. I started out by cutting off the little tabs on the bottom of each of these pieces. If you were to use the kit as it was intended, you would have needed those tabs to stand them up in the little stand that it came with, but I didn't need them for that. So I ended up trimming down the bottom of them a little bit as well. But you're just, again, I'm just trying to give you the inspiration and idea that you can take things and you may have something similar but a little bit different, but you can still see how you can put them together to make something that you love. So we're going to assemble this. I'm using some wood glue here, and I just took my time, let everything dry. I didn't want, it didn't take a long time, but I did give it some time to properly dry. We're going to attach baby Jesus to Mary and Joseph, then attach them to the stable. And then I am using hot glue to attach these to the sign because I just thought with the burlap and stuff that would maybe have it hold better. So we have the wise men, and I know that by the time the wise men reached baby Jesus, he was 3 years old? 3 years old. So I understand that they're headed to him and he's in a manger. But when we have the nativity scene, it's telling a whole story in one scene. So that is how I view that. So we're going to hot glue the wise men on one side of the frame, and the nativity or the stable, I keep saying the wrong thing, with Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus on the other side. And I love this sign. You can hang it up. You could use it as a leaner sign, but it tells the story. It tells the story of the birth of Jesus, and I absolutely love this one. Please let me know what you think about it. So here's a little tiered tray decor piece I have. I have had it for my tiered tray for years now, and like I said, if you get tired of something, just redo it. I took it out, sanded it, and it's a beautiful block of wood. I think that originally came from Hobby Lobby. I'm not really sure, but I was like, yes, I can do something with this. So we're going to stain this with some antique wax, and like I said, you just want to brush this on and then wipe it off, or don't wipe it off. Just depends on the rich and depth of that antique wax color that you are going for in your project. So I wanted a pretty rich brown, and so I did it accordingly. Now this antique wax is actually more of a background color. We're going to dry brush, kind of like a heavy dry brush of some white paint. And that means basically you don't load up your paintbrush. I'm going to end up going pretty heavy with the white, but I wanted to build on it. I wanted the antique waxed stained wood peeking through, but I needed a brighter base for the decal that we're going to use. Once again, I'm going to be using a decal given to me by a friend, but you could get a stencil or an image to just attach onto this. But because the graphic I'm using is black, I needed it to pop more. So as you can see, that's the kind of the color and the look I went for, with that stained wood underneath and then the white plus the decal. I'm not sure how well it would have stuck to the antique wax, so that is something to keep in mind. But really, really simple. We're just applying that. Again, I'm still pretty new to these decals because I don't own a Cricut, so it's not something I use very often. But just a very simple applying that onto the sign. And this is a great little piece. I love the word Noel for Christmas. Look it up. The birth of Jesus is what it's talking about. And I thought it would be a really nice addition to maybe set next to a nativity or something along those lines. I can't wait to decorate for Christmas. But how about you? When do you start decorating for Christmas? All right, first up, I have this wood house. This is one I think that came from Hobby Lobby. Dollar Tree has had very similar pieces, or you could simply cut a piece of scrap wood. But this was a clearance find, I think, from Hobby Lobby, and I just sanded it down. It's real wood. You'll see I used some MDF pieces as well, but this one is real wood, and I just sanded it down, and now we're going to give it a coat of white paint. I'm trying to use up some acrylic paint that I have on hand, so but I'm going to do a messy coat in that I'm going to let some of the wood show a little bit on the edges. We are going to go across and sand it as well, but you can make this as pristine a coat of paint as you would like, or you can do it with a chippy brush, but we're going to go ahead once it dries and sand down the edges. I am going to say right now that I'm going to apologize for a little bit of shaking when I'm sanding and the lighting. I'm working on it. My parents are letting me use my mom's craft space at their house to do my crafting right now because we are preparing to move. That's something, a whole other thing. But anyways, so I'm working with a different setup and I'm trying to get it correct. But anyways, I have this piece of scrap plaid ribbon. This is a very simple project. I thought this was something that was really, really cute. And I find that a lot of times these simple things remind me of old traditional decor. Anyways, I have this scrap of wired ribbon. Wired ribbon definitely makes it easier, and I just tied it off. And here I'm just fussing with it, straightening it a little bit, and then we're going to trim down the tails. I wasn't exactly sure how this was going to pan out, but I ended up deciding to tie it in a double knot to keep it on there nice and tight. I didn't hot glue the ribbon itself down, but you could if you wanted to. And I'm just kind of paying attention to how I'm tying it to keep it looking nice. It didn't necessarily have to be straight or anything, but just to make it look nice. Once again, trimming it down, and I decided I would just kind of fold it over so that this piece kind of looks like a center of a bow. I did it off center just a little bit, and then I just glued down the underside of that kind of onto the ribbon to hold it in place. And then we want to embellish this little piece. So I went into some of my little Christmas scraps. I cut down, these are just some of those garland ties from Dollar Tree or Hobby Lobby. They both have them. A little pine cone I had lying around and a bell. You could just whatever little scraps from picks. When you pull out your Christmas decor, you know sometimes there's little bits and pieces at the bottom from things that fell apart. Save those. They're really great for crafting. So I'm just using a tiny bit of hot glue to hot glue these underneath the ribbon to keep everything in place, because it's not like tied, it's tied tight, but not like so tight that I would want it to hold everything up. And I'm just using just little embellishments. I do end up adding another green piece here in a second to the bottom because I thought it looked more natural to look like a piece was being tied like underneath. You know what else would be really cute? I just didn't have these with me and I didn't think of it at the time. But a cinnamon stick would be really, really cute tied in something like this. But that is all there is to this one. Just use the bits and pieces that you have lying around. And I thought this would be a really pretty, kind of traditional, simple looking accent piece on a shelf or wherever, up to your tray. But let me know what you think about this one down in the comments. For this next one, this is a sign that I got at Dollar Tree. It looks like I previously used it for something and I pulled the pieces off, so it's okay. We're gonna sand it down, smooth it out, and we're gonna do like a messy coat of paint once again. But these wood plaque pieces or wood plank signs from Dollar Tree or Hobby Lobby has them. I always say those two stores, but I'm guessing like Michael's or what's the other one? Joann Fabrics might have some. I just don't get into those stores very often at all. Also, thrift stores or old decor that you have lying around, sand it down if you don't like what's on it and redo it. So I wanted to go over this with some white paint. I wanted to cover up those blemishes, but I also did want that white messy look kind of coordinating with the previous piece. So I started with a little bit of paint and then just built on it. I think I was just tapping off something that I had sanded down that I had found on there. So I'm just gonna build on it because I didn't want to go too heavy with the paint. But anyways, you're gonna see just building on it, starting out small, going. It looks a little bit of a hot mess here, but when it's all said and done, it looked better. You could simply use the plain bare wood or give it a solid coat if you wanted as well. It's going to depend on your preference for your style and what type of piece you're working with. If you're new here, I want to say welcome. My name is Leanne. I enjoy sharing budget-friendly DIYs here on my channel, and I would love it if you would consider subscribing to my channel before you leave, and make sure you turn on your notification bell so you don't miss out on my future videos. Once that paint was dry, I did go ahead and sand down the edges where I'd accidentally gotten the paint over the edge, and that cleaned it up really easy. And then I did just sand off any pieces that are rough. Like I said, sorry, I think the sanding makes my camera shake. I got to work on my setup, my temporary setup for this crafting season. But we're just going to clean that up a little bit. And then I had in my stash something, I think I did pick these up last year, but they're probably available at Hobby Lobby now. They're $2.99. They're called Christmas Party Decor, and they came with 4 pieces, 2 Merry and 2 I think Enjoy. I think they're used for like table decor, but they don't have holes in it or anything. They did come with a string, I think, that I just cut off, but I love it. So I gave that a messy coat of a tan paint, a beige paint, and then these wood stickers were from Target Dollar Spot, but I got them for 99 cents at a thrift store last year. But there's all sorts of embellishment pieces at the Dollar Tree and Hobby Lobby, Walmart. When I went to pull the first one off, I did break it, so that was off to a great start. But they're very, very sticky. I first tried putting this on with hot glue thinking that would help, but they're very sticky, and it made it so that only the center had contact with the board. So I pulled that hot glue off and just used the stickiness of the sticker, and they are holding up just fine. And the piece that I broke off, well, I'm just going to stick it down in place. And I'm just going to use 8 total of these snowflakes. I did realize to just bend the plastic back better so that I didn't have to pull up so much on the sticker, and that helped not break any more of them. And I liked the patterns that they were already on this page or this sheet, so that's how I did it. And I just worked on my spacing, and I put them on the top plank and the bottom plank kind of as a border. And then we're going to go ahead and get them centered, press them down. Then we're going to glue on the Merry. I decided to use this wood glue from Dollar Tree. I think it's a super glue wood glue. And I just spread it out with my finger because I didn't want anything really oozing out, although you can clean it up. And then I just pressed that down. You could add a bow onto the twine. I thought about adding beads onto the twine, but I didn't want to go overboard. I liked it neutral with that little bit of color. I'm just cleaning up some of the glue that spilled out. And I really, really like how this one came out. Let me know what you think. You know, you don't have to try to reinvent the wheel or overcomplicate your DIYs. I like DIYs that have many layers, but I also sometimes just enjoy a project that is pretty simple to put together. And this is one of those. And I liked that I did in this video a couple of my DIYs that coordinated together. You don't have to do that, but I thought that these two went really well together, and then the remaining DIYs are going to coordinate well as well. All right, so up next I have this white tree from Dollar Tree. I never use the white trees, but I had seen an idea somewhere someday. I don't know where it was, and I just jotted the idea down in my notebook and wanted to give it a try. So this little tree, this is a weird angle, but I wanted you to be able to see what I was doing. So I put the little stand on it, and we're going to fluff the tree. These have gotten so much more sparse over the years, but it's okay because this is one we're going to be filling in, and we're going to use ribbon. So I pulled out, you could use as many as you wanted, but I pulled out 3 different ribbons in coordinating colors, and we're just going to go for a beige and white, very simple and like more neutral pattern here, but you can do anything you want. I guess you could use the green tree and use some, like maybe like that plaid ribbon I used in the last DIY. Some of those would probably be really pretty in a green tree as well, but I cut them down to the approximate length I thought I needed, and then I did dovetail all of them. And I did this with, like I said, a couple different patterns, different material. They are all like, well, maybe they're not all wired. No, I think they are all wired. I think wired is easier, but they aren't all the same thickness. So we're just going to tie these. I did one of each ribbon in each section of the tree. So I know it's kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see this, and I was moving the tree all around, and anyways, but you get the general idea. I did end up kind of pushing down each level of branches to get them out of the way while I tied these on. And I tried to spread them out so that the ribbons were going in different directions. And then once all of these are tied on, we'll get into making it look a little bit more pretty. But let me know what you think of this idea. If I can find the photo or the link of where I saw it, I will link it down below. But I honestly don't know if I have that, because sometimes I just see an idea and jot the idea down. So maybe it would have made sense to do the dovetails at the end. I don't know. You can get the idea and decide which order you want to do things, because of course as I trimmed down the ribbons, I had to redo the dovetails. So I'm just trimming them similar to the length of the branches, but not exactly. I'm just adding in more fluff. It adds in all of this really fun, pretty texture. And I love how this came out. I may end up putting a small string of lights on this when I do decorate my home. I don't know. We will hopefully be we will be in our new home by then. So I have no idea what I'm going to be doing for Christmas, but I'm going to keep making Christmas DIYs as long as I have time to in the process of trying to move. So anyways, tried this angle as well, which is not the most flattering angle for myself and my face, but you can see what I'm doing. I'm just trimming, and then I am adding in the dovetails, which isn't necessary, but I thought it looked really nice. And I'm just fluffing, turning, trimming. You get the idea. And this is how this little tree came out. I ended up really, really liking it. I wasn't sure at first if it was really going to do what I was hoping it would, but it did. I like it. Let me know what you think down below, and if you would give this a try. So I have this sign. This was from, I think this was from Aldi that I got on clearance, but I just wanted to show you, it doesn't matter what kind of sign you have, what what it was made for, but if you can get a good deal on it, pick it up. So I'm using my heat gun to loosen up the sticker, to loosen up that bead, to pop that off, and I'm peeling off the paper. It actually came out really well. I did ultimately take it out to my garage and sand it down, but if you don't have a sander, take a damp paper towel, let it sit on that paper, and scrape it off. You might have to do it a couple times to get all the layers off, but then you have a nice, great blank. This is a good, solid piece. It is MDF, but it was a nice, thick, solid piece, and I got it for probably under $2, maybe even under $1 from Aldi. So all sorts of things that you can do. I actually pick those up quite a bit at Aldi. Anyway, I poured the paint out and poured out way too much, but I'm using a beige colored paint. I probably should have poured the paint out on a plate, but I didn't have all my stuff with me at my mom and dad's when I was crafting, and I just went with what I had in front of me because I was trying to get this done. So we gave that a good coat. We did it on all the sides, front, back, and all the sides. And now we're going to make a bunch of little tassels. So I'm just using something that I had laying around that you'll see eventually in a video. And I'm wrapping around some white yarn. And you can also use your fingers, use a scrap piece of cardboard. Anyways, I slid it off onto a paintbrush because normally if you're making tassels, you put a little piece of ribbon in the top part, like the little head of the tassel. But because I won't be doing that, I didn't want it to close up on me while I was tying it. So I just stuck a paintbrush in there to hold it together, or to, keep that peak, I guess you could say, and then tied it off with another piece of yarn, and I trimmed them down. You can do that however thick you want to do it. You're going to need length or as many of these, depending on how big of a sign you're making. So I don't want to tell you you do a certain amount, but do it to what looks good to you. And we're going to make a little tree out of the tassels. And I have this little wood piece that I'm going to hot glue down, and then we're going to hot glue our tassels. I'm going to work from the bottom up so that the tassels are hanging down up top, the ones that will be below them. So I hope that's making sense. And you could use twine, you could use a color, you could paint the background, obviously a color. You could use, I don't know if a ribbon would really work for the tassel, but any type of yarn or jute or baker's twine, like a striped baker's twine could be really cute too and whimsical. But you, I think, can get the idea here. But I saw this idea somewhere. I don't know where the inspiration piece is from. If I can find any of them, I will let you know. But sometimes I just jot down ideas either when they come into my mind or when I see a picture or I see something in a store. Anyways, glue those down, just doing one last tassel on each layer of your tree. And then I got done with this and I was like, I really should do the other side of this sign. So we're going to make it double-sided. I had these nativity ornaments from Hobby Lobby, $2.99 for a 3-pack, but they are 40 or 50% off now, so you can get them for maybe $1.50. Dollar Tree also has some similar pieces, so whatever you've got. But I'm going to paint this with some white paint. I'm kind of stippling it on because I didn't want any paint to gob up in all of the intricate cutout pieces of this little piece. So that's why I'm doing it this way instead of just dipping a paintbrush in and brushing it on. I think that this helps kind of letting the paint, it helps prevent the paint pooling in all of those little crevices. And then we're going to flip our sign over. I did stick something underneath it to let it lay a little bit more flat. And we're going to, once again, I'm going to use this wood glue to attach this piece on. And because I don't want it coming out in all the crevices, I'm going to spread it out with my finger. But that was a good idea. But when I went to put it down, I dropped it and still had to clean up the sign. But it's okay. It worked out fine. I used a baby wipe, but you can use like a damp paper towel and clean that up. You have a little bit of wiggle room here, not a lot with that glue, but placing it down and cleaning up my little mess here. If you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out so much. YouTube likes it and it lets them know, hey, you like it, maybe someone else will, and they'll share it with others. I have this little vinyl cutout of the word peace that my friend gave to me. I do not have a Cricut, but I was happy to use this, but you could also stencil on a word or just leave it blank if you wanted. And this is how this sign came out. I love this so much. I love all of the traditional colors of that are typically used at Christmas time, but I do also like mixing in some neutral pieces here as well. So let me know what you think of this one. All right, for our last little piece, there's another sign I picked up on clearance, I think from Dollar General. They have a lot of really great clearance finds usually. This paper was not picking off very easily. I wanted to see how far I could get just by picking it off, but it would have taken soaking it with a paper towel, but I skipped that and just brought it out to my garage and sanded it down. We're going to go in with more of that beige paint and give this a really good coat. This is for front, back, and all of the sides. It really only took one coat, but if you end up painting over whatever the sign originally came as, you might have to do a couple coats of paint. You could even just sand it down to rough it up a little bit to let the paint adhere better, and then just paint over the rest of the paper. So it's really going to depend on what your base is. I have these stencils from Hobby Lobby. They are great. It's $1.99. That's original price. Remember, you can always get them on sale. And they come in 2 different patterns, and they have them at different holidays, lots of different options. I have several of them. And I'm just going to stencil on some white paint. And I'm just not going too heavy because, one, I don't want bleed through, but also we're going to be making this look like a very rustic piece. And I'm going to dry that with my heat gun. I don't think I showed you that. Flip it over, and we're going to do a different snowflake. You could use the same one on both sides. It doesn't matter. And we're just going to keep this really simple, but I do love how this piece came out. Once this is completely dry, I did go over this with my little finger sander, and it did move the white paint around, but I was able to kind of dust that off. But I went in with a softer sandpaper at first, and then I went in with a harsher one. I can never remember the grits. I'm working on it, like the number grits. Should it be I don't remember. Anyways, I'm roughing this up on purpose. I'm wanting to get off some of that paint, and then I'm going to sand down the edges as well. So you can see that this looks like an older rustic-y piece. Some of the paint is missing, and that was on purpose, but you don't have to go for that look if you don't like that look. Looks like there was actually a little bit more dust on there I needed to wipe off with my hand, but forgive me. I'm trying to craft while I prepare to move. But that is it for these DIYs. Let me know what you think. I love that they don't go together necessarily as a set, but they do coordinate really well together. We're going to start out by mixing up some paints. I'm just going to use a green that I had on hand and dull it down with, well, not dull it down, deepen it with some black paint. I probably would have used, what is it called? I think it's called Fern by Waverly. But in case you missed my previous video, I have been moving my crafting space temporarily over to my parents because we are in the process of moving. And I didn't bring everything over, so I was just using what I had on hand. I also wanted to thin this out a little bit because I remember that I kind of wanted to make this not quite like a stain, but I did want to be able to see the wood through it just a little bit. So I have this wood house. This was from, I think it was from Target Dollar Spot at some point, but I've already previously used it, as you can see. But we're going to paint the front and the back with this green paint, and I mixed it, but I didn't fully mix it. Like, it's a little bit streaky. I like that look. If that bothers you, you know, don't do that. And then I'm going to just paint the edges, the roof, and the sides with some white paint as well. I couldn't fully sand off the black. I mean, I probably could have, but I didn't. We're going to give it a fresh coat. I'm going with green and white. You do whatever colors you want to do. And then I have these stamps. I think a friend gave these to me, so I'm not sure where they came from, but Dollar Tree has really been stepping up their stamps. At least mine has. It's pretty nice. So I am using some paint to do this because I didn't have any white ink. So I just used a sponge brush and dabbed it on, trying to not like make it, you know, gob up in the crevices. And then I also had this little saying that said, I think there's no place like home. Anyway, I thought this was really cute, and it's not perfect. I did touch up just a little bit one of the E's to make sure you could actually read it, but I didn't mind it being a little less than perfect. Honestly, I see stuff in stores that look a little bit rustic and like they were homemade, and so I just embraced it. It's not super perfect, but I love how this came out even with the imperfect snowflake, and the green does look a little bit blotchy here on camera, but it's not that bad in person. I think it just wasn't fully dry. For these next two projects, we're going to use some scrap pieces of wood that are cut into a triangle, and everything that is a triangle is a Christmas tree when it comes to this time of year. Am I right? So I'm going to use some green paint that was mixed up, and I'm really watering this down really just by dampening my paintbrush because I wanted the wood grain to come through here. So I'm going to give this a good coat on all the sides, front and back, but you can make it, you know, more of a solid green if you want. However you want to do this. You can make it rustic or not rustic. You can make it bright and vibrant. You can make it dull. You could just stain it antique wax. You get the idea. You're going to do it however you want. The second one, I'm going to use some white paint, and this I don't know. I don't have all my normal crafting supplies with me when I'm doing these videos right now, so I just kind of put the paint on my paintbrush and then gently dipped it into some water and then brushed this on and wiped it off. So I'm trying to go for a colored stain, I suppose you could say, or the appearance of a colored stain. And then I wiped it back. Then I realized this was way too, it was not bright enough. It was way too see-through. There's a word I'm looking for, but it's left me. So I just kept going and layering it and adding more paint, less water, letting it sit for a little bit before I dried it off, before I wiped it off, until I got the look I want. So here I was like, okay, I need to see what it looks like. And so I dried it with my heat gun and I went back again. But the point of this is to show you how you can kind of make a little bit of a stain if you want to see that wood grain, and that's the look I was going for. So we're making some trees, and I needed some trunks to our trees. So I had this little wood piece in my stash, and I'm just going to stain this with some antique wax. I'm going on pretty thick here before I go ahead and wipe it off. But that's, once again, totally up to you. Now, I didn't put any stain on the top because I didn't want there to be anything to get in the way of the glue that we're going to use later on. So I did notice a couple spots that I had missed, so I went back and touched them up and then wiped it off and then let that sit to dry. For the next one, we're going to use a little wooden spool. just a plain little wooden spool, and once again with the antique wax. And you'll notice that depending on the type of wood you're using is going to make it vary on how it takes it, how long you would need to leave it on or wipe it off, depending on what you're going for. But I like that they're not exactly the same, that this one is a little bit thinner. I did go ahead and wipe off with a paper towel kind of in the cracks there to get some of that extra off. Now we're going to assemble this. I'm going to use some super glue, wood glue. This is from Dollar Tree, and I'm spreading it around with my finger. And then I do use a little bit of hot glue, not making sure that it's not all in the exact same spot. There was a little bit of overlap, but it's fine. It worked fine as long as you have some that is not overlapping. That's kind of important. And I attached my spool onto this little wood disc round. I don't know what you would call that, little wood piece. And then we're going to attach our triangle to the top of the spool, once again using some wood glue and some hot glue. And you notice I did sand down just the bottom of that a little bit. There is no sealant on it. It was just a little bit of paint, but to help that glue stick, I just sanded off, just like on this one too, just a little section of it. And I did Mod Podge the front and backs of these triangles, but I just purposely left the bottom alone to make sure I didn't have any trouble. And we're going to attach our green one onto this base and wipe off any excess glue. And I really like how these ones came out. I think this makes a sweet little set of trees. And there's so many varieties here, so many different things that you could use for your trunks and scrap pieces of wood for the trees. Use your imagination, grow through your stash, find out what little bits and pieces you have, and make yourself some little trees. I thought it looked nice with the little house, and this would make a nice little ensemble in decor. For this next one, I believe this is a scrap piece of flooring. My friend gave this to me, but you can use any scrap piece of wood, or even Dollar Tree has some pieces. And I have this inspiration piece from Wayfair. It's probably much larger than the sign that I'm going to make, but I loved it and I thought I can definitely make this. But I put off this little DIY because I thought I'm going to mess this up. But I'm going to just take you through the process here and show you you do not have to be an artist. This is actually easier than it seems like it was going to be. I did sand down my piece of wood, not completely. It's definitely still rough, but it was good enough for me here. And I kind of kept going back to the inspiration picture. And I'll try to remember to link that down in the description box for you to reference if you would like. And I didn't do it exact, but I did use that as inspiration. So the first white tree, I just did these little dash marks. And then I took some gold paint and made, I guess you could say, like a stick figure tree. I also used that gold for the base of that other tree. Put little white balls on the gold stick tree. Then I made this solid triangle. I missed painting that, but you get the idea. Put a little gold trunk and a simple gold star and just filled that in. I just did little dash marks for the star because it was hard to get it, looking like a star, and that worked really well. And then we're going to go to the other side. And I tried to have these all kind of like centered. I didn't do the white at the bottom that the inspiration piece had, but that's certainly an option. So for this one, we're just going to do a straight line down with white paint. And then we're going to do like the drapey, swoopy branches. And I tried to not overthink it because even in the inspiration piece from Wayfair, it was not perfect. It looks like it was hand done. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go with this and not overthink it. Who cares if I mess it up? It's a scrap piece of wood. I made the little dash marks. This is a little hard to see on camera here, but I put a little gold dot at the top and at the bottom of each one of those little dashes hanging off of the tree. And then for my last tree, we're going to do another solid white tree like we had on the other end. And I do use a slightly thicker paintbrush for filling this in, but this is majorly sped up because this would take a while. But take your time, and it's a pretty therapeutic, at least to me, project to do. I did use my heat gun to dry this down so that we could do the next part. I made the trunk on this one white, and then we're going to put some gold dots randomly on this tree, and then I'm going to add on a little star as well. I think the key to this is, one, don't overthink it, just go for it. If you have to sand it down, whatever. And get some small paintbrushes. They don't have to be pricey. You can get them at Walmart, Hobby Lobby, Dollar Tree. Just have some small paintbrushes. That makes a world of difference in these projects. But truthfully, do not overthink this type of thing. You don't have to be perfect at it, and it still comes out. I really loved this project. It was so fun to make. I love painting projects. I don't do enough of them. But when you just kind of look at the whole thing, and I didn't put anything on this to hang it up, but you can put a sawtooth hanger or attach some twine on the back to hang it up. You could just use it as a leaner sign, which is probably what I'm going to do. But when you look at this piece as a whole, I just love how this came out. I think it looks great. Let me know what you think, and would you give something like this a try? Remember, you don't have to be an artist, and it doesn't have to be perfect. This wood round sign came from Dollar Tree, from their Crafter Square, but I know that they have these at a lot of craft stores and Walmart. And then this metal Merry Christmas. This came from Dollar General, I'm pretty sure, and I bought a couple of them last year at the end of the season. They have their stuff super cheap when it's on clearance, and I'm sure I got it for like 10 or 20 cents. So we're going to get back to that in a second, but it was perfect, the perfect size for this wood round. So now I'm going to make a little bow with this white and beige striped ribbon, and I just, because this is a one-sided ribbon, meaning the other side looks different than the other, I made the little loop at the top, and then I tied that with a piece of twine, and then I tied on the tails so that they could hang down properly. And then I decided I wanted to cover up the twine in the center of the bow, so I just cut off a smaller piece of the ribbon, just a little scrap piece, and I'm just going to hot glue that around. And I'm also going to tighten it up a little bit. And then once that is all done, we're going to kind of adjust our bow here and just kind of try to fluff it. I left the tails long. We'll trim them down at the end. I wanted to wait and see how this whole thing was going to come together. So I am going to hot glue on the metal piece here, but you know, they don't always stick really great with, I don't know, with hot glue, with metal, but I also wasn't sure what else to do because there wasn't a large space to attach it. So I'm just going to attach all the embellishments over it, and it seems to be holding pretty well. So that's what I'm doing here. And I'm just cutting up some scraps. I have little pieces of those garland ties, Dollar Tree, Hobby Lobby, they all have them. And I just save all of the bits and pieces. I have a couple of little Ziploc bags in my stash from just like odds and ends and scrap pieces and like berries that fell off of something, little greenery pieces, leaves from flower picks that I didn't use. And we're just going to hot glue them in and around this bow to look, you know, like it's a layered piece here. And I just kind of did what looked right to my eye. And then I have these little green sparkly pieces. I know those for sure came from a pick from Dollar Tree. And you can see they're just these tiny little pieces. We're hot gluing that underneath the bow. And I'm just putting my finger inside the bow of the loop to press it down on the pieces where the glue is attaching. And then I decided to add just a little smidgen of red. This is some berries that came off of the Dollar Tree berry garlands. And I just threw some hot glue on them and tucked them underneath there. There weren't anything grand, but just a little pop of red up there. And then I am doing the dovetail on the ribbons, folding them and cutting from the outside in. I do sometimes get that wrong. I end up trimming them up again because, yeah, it was a little too long. But this piece was super simple. Sometimes you just have something simple from a store and you want to attach it to something else, and it just makes it look a little bit more substantial than it would have on its own. This is a great example of that. Nothing super difficult, but I love how this piece came out. All right, first up I have this piece of a spindle. I think this looks like it was maybe from the back of a chair, but a friend gave this to me that she probably got on the side of the road, and I've already used part of it for something else. So it's literally just a scrap. I'm going to sand this down, just trying to smooth it and clean it up a little bit. I did wipe it down, but I just wanted to get it cleaned up. So I'm just using my finger sander, and because it's, you know, lots of little pieces. So I'm just going to go around and clean that up best I can. I also smoothed out the top and the bottom. And then I did wipe this down with a baby wipe just to get all of the dust off and give that a good cleaning. You can see it's not all fully sanded, but it was good. So now we're going to go in with a chippy brush and just a little bit of white paint, and we're going to just, you know, not a lot of paint on there, do kind of like a dry brush, but I keep layering it so it ends up being like a heavier dry brush. But I knew that I wanted the wood to peek through, which is another reason I wanted to sand it down, because I didn't want that yellow tone of the wood so much, but I did want you to be able to see that it was wood. So I'm just going to kind of go over this until I get the desired look and then let that dry. So just build. It's easier than taking the paint off. Start with a little bit and then move forward. While it is drying, I am going to take this little red bell. These are probably from the Dollar Tree, maybe Dollar General. I don't know, but it was in my stash. And I'm just using a little bit of brown paint and a stencil brush and dabbing that on. I wanted this to not look as new and shiny. I wanted it to look a little bit older. And then I'm kind of just letting it dry a little bit, and then I dab it with a paper towel. Just, you know, I'm not trying to go for like a heavy brown look, just to make it look a little bit more old and rustic. And once that is all done, I also have this hardware piece, these little, I think they're called, are these? No, I can't remember what these are called, but I found these in my little hardware box, and I dabbed on the brown paint, which I didn't end up letting it dry enough, and it ended up kind of coming off of the metal pieces, but whatever. I'm sealing this with just some Mod Podge. I sealed these pieces, the hardware pieces too, and I think that's where some of the paint came off because it wasn't fully dry. But same thing on my bell. I just was careful to not let any of the Mod Podge, you know, gob up in like the stars or the cutout at the top or anything like that. So I'm just using my needle nose pliers to hold this and try to screw these little, I can't even remember what they're called. I want to say eye hook, but I don't know if that's right. Maybe they are. Screwing that in. This would be helpful if you had a little tiny drill bit to get the hole started. I did not, but this one went in pretty good, and I'm just screwing that into the top, and then we're going to do the same thing on the bottom piece. Now the bottom was a little bit harder, so I'm just using little scissors, little tools, whatever I could find to try to get the hole started. So this may not be the easiest way to do it, but it's a way to do it if you don't have power tools or you're just working with what you got. But I did ultimately get this in. It just took me a little bit. I really had to press on it while it kind of got started, and then I was able to just kind of screw that in. So now with our bell, we're going to just tie a little piece of twine, and I'm going to feed that through the bottom. Decide which end you want to be the top and the bottom of that spindle piece. It's totally up to you. And I was deciding, do I want the bell to hang down further or not? And I decided I didn't really want it hanging down far because it was going to wobble enough without it hanging down far. So I just tied the string, the twine, nice and tight up at the top. But that's going to be obviously according to your personal preference. If you're new here, I want to welcome you. My name is Leanne. I like to share budget-friendly DIYs here on this channel. I love crafting for Christmas, but I do crafts all year long, and I would love it if you would consider subscribing to my channel so that you don't miss out on my future ones. So I went to hang a little hanger on the top piece, and when I pulled it, I don't know what happened. It broke. It didn't just come out, it broke. Like the metal broke. So I guess I didn't know my own strength. So, yeah, I was just showing you there. It just totally broke right off. So I am going to thread the twine through, and then I'll show you how I'm fixing this little situation here. I just thread in the loop through it and then pull the loose ends through the top. And then I tied a knot at the top of that to tie the loose ends together. So hopefully I described that well enough and you can see it well enough. Now, we're going to just use some hot glue to reattach this, and it seems to be holding just fine. Maybe not ideal if you were selling these or giving these away. I don't know, but I feel like the hot glue does hold pretty good with the wood, even though we have metal here. I don't often use wood hot glue on metal, but it seemed to work just fine. I do not have a Christmas tree set up to show this to you, and we are preparing to move, so I can just show this to you laying down, but actually I could have held it up, which you'll see in future ones, but I love how this came out. Let me know what you think. This small tobacco basket came from Dollar General. I got them last year, a couple of them on clearance, super, super cheap. I got some natural colored ones and some red ones. So we're going to use one of the red ones today, and I'm just making it look a little bit, again, a little bit older, a little bit more vintage maybe, with a little bit of antique wax, not a lot on my brush. I'm dabbing it off so that I'm not gobbing it on. You can see I got a couple of big streaks, but it's okay. We're actually going to cover a lot of this up anyway, but this is optional, but I just thought I would give you this idea. Remember, these DIYs are all inspiration for you. You don't have to recreate them exactly, but use them to get ideas. When I was looking for some ideas, I browsed Pinterest and YouTube, and some of these stemmed from that, and some of them did not. Some of them were just off the top of my head. But all right, so I have this little white tree. That is an ornament from Dollar Tree from previous years. They probably have it again this year or something similar somewhere else. And then this little, I think it's like a shell piece. This came off of a sign from Dollar Tree at some point. So I just wanted a base. You could just cut out a piece of cardboard or something, but I had that in my stash because I pretty much save everything. So the idea behind this is that I wanted like a little assemblage, is that the word, to go inside of this basket. So you could use all sorts of things. This is just what I had on hand. And I wanted to make a little greenery piece, not really a wreath. I decided to use the back end of this, but I cut down some garland ties. Those are from, I think I usually get mine from Dollar Tree, but Hobby Lobby has some, but I actually like the ones from Dollar Tree better. But I cut them down and we're just creating, the whole center is going to be covered up by the bow, which is why I made the bow at that point. That was just a scrap piece of bow, a simple bow that I made, nothing fancy. And I just wanted to make sure, like, for the size of it and how I needed this to look. So I'm just hot gluing these pieces all around to just kind of stick out. We're going to fill up all of it to cover the cardboard. I'm even just using some little pieces here to fill in to cover up the cardboard. They didn't need all of it like sticking really far out. But you could make a swag, like a mini swag, but this is just how I decided to do it. I'm trimming with my wire cutters. Once I got down to it, just, once I got it done, I wanted to see, some of those were a little too long. And so here's how we're doing it. I just wanted to see it in the basket to know how long or short I needed to cut the ribbon tails. And I did dovetail them and got the position inside the basket so that I knew where to put the bow and attached my bow. Just make sure that you hold your pieces down until the hot glue settles a little bit. That definitely helps hot glue, hold better. I was pulling these little white berries off because I thought I was going to use them. I don't know if I even showed it to you, but I didn't like how it looked. I thought I was going to use them on that greenery piece. So I'm just using a little bit of hot glue. Like I said, this white tree was an ornament from Dollar Tree at some point, but Dollar General has these. Hobby Lobby, Walmart has all sorts of little things. Any little ornament would be great, I think, in there. And then I'm just kind of drawing lines with my pencil because I was like, where do I put the hot glue on this? I thought this was the best way to do it. And I still got it wrong. I still wasn't thinking about, I still put it on places that I wasn't supposed to, but whatever. I work on a silicone mat, so if hot glue comes through to the other side, it just is easy to peel off. But I'm going to press the basket down on each of those spots until it is, set a little bit and holds nicely. Now this tree has a little hole where the ornament was, like where the string was, and I had previously filled it in with hot glue, but I wanted to cover it up with some white paint. So I'm just, got a little white paint in my basket too, but I'm just brushing that on the tree. But because that covered up some of the sparkle, I did it in various places of the tree so it looked more purposeful. And then I'm just going to take this really thick jute twine or jute cord and tying that on the back. I'm using a little hot glue to hold the knot together there. And that's so that you can hang it up. This could also just be set against the back of something. Okay, so here's the white berries. I wanted to incorporate some white in this part here with the ribbon and the greenery. And I was just like, this looks like eyeballs. Like, this is weird. So I left this in just to show you. Sometimes I try stuff and it doesn't work, but this is how it came out. I really like this piece. I just feel like it has kind of an older feel to it. And yeah, let me know what you think of this. This was just using things that I already had on hand. I'm using some of this scrap paper that I picked up at Hobby Lobby a long time ago. You can see the orange sticker. It was a clearance find, but I just wanted to show you that pack. And then in we go with some wooden spools. These were sent to me by a friend, but maybe you can find these just at your house. They don't even necessarily have to be wooden. I'm going to wrap mine with some scrapbook paper. I went for like kind of a more vintage feel pattern, at least in my opinion. And I just kind of creased it with my fingernail to figure out like the size of it. And I'm just hot gluing on the paper. So if you're worried about ruining an old wooden spool, I'm not. I will kind of later, so I'm sorry if that's a problem for you. But on here, I'm not. This tree I had in my stash, it had no stem on it. So I did put some hot glue, not just in the center, but kind of around it a little bit so that it would hold onto the spool. I've seen these little Christmas trees and spools all over the internet. And I think they're so cute and so fun, inexpensive to make. This tree was missing its trunk. What else was I going to do with this, you know? And then this other little one came from the Dollar Tree. They come in packs in all different colors. I'm going to save that little wooden piece because you never know. And I was just making sure that the stem or trunk of that was not going to poke through to the other side. And I'm just going to put a good amount on there. So there is hot glue like in the center of these wooden spools. I've seen people cram some floral foam down in them if that bothers you. I don't know that these are even all like actually vintage, but they're old and they're cute. And this is a really cute but simple and very, very quick DIY. And it took no time at all. I went with the green trees and a more traditional red and green plaid paper just because, again, I really like that look. Up next, I went to my pantry and pulled out some cinnamon sticks. And then I have this red and white jute twine or jute cord. And I'm just going to make a little cinnamon stick bundle. I was just kind of messing with them a little bit. And to make sure they stayed, I am going to use a little bit of hot glue to help hold them in place so that I'm not relying on that jute I don't know. Is that jute? That's not jute. Isn't jute the material? I don't know. Baker's twine? Is this like a thicker baker's twine? I don't know. Glue the cinnamon sticks together. I'm wrapping this around like 3 times and then we're going to tie it in a knot. And honestly, I feel like you could almost leave it as is. This is another little ornament. I love making little ornaments and I think it's fun to have a mismatched ornaments. And that's what they, back in the day, they were making all of their stuff because they didn't have the money for it, and they weren't going to spend their resources on it. So I thought this was fun. I am going to use a little bit of greenery here just to embellish this a little bit. I just used kind of my little scraps that I had trimmed off of another project and just used a little bit of hot glue to help hold it there. I bumped the camera because I burnt myself, but that's okay. And then some little red berries off of a pick and just put that on top. And then you will just tie the remaining twine or ribbon, whatever you decide to use, up at the top to make a little knot so that you can hang it up. Easy peasy. This is another really, really quick DIY to make, not much to it. And I just think it's so cute. Honestly, without the hanger, you could also use this on like a tiered tray for just this cute little bundle. But lots of different options of how you could display it. But I think it's very pretty, super sweet. Let me know what you think. Up next, I have a little ball lid from a jar, and I had, for some reason, a bunch of extra ones of these. I don't know why, so I threw them in my craft stash. I have this sparkly gold, what is it called? Vinyl from Dollar Tree. So it's the cheap stuff. I've heard it's not super great for Cricut, but I don't have a vinyl cutting machine anyway. So I just traced a circle out. We're going to go a little bit more gaudy with this ornament here, but it was very reminiscent of, I don't know, ornaments that I remember seeing. So we're going to stick that on here. I don't know how well it really sticks on the metal, but I end up using some hot glue for some embellishments and around the edges so it all works out okay. Gonna trim, just stick that down and then trim off the edges here. And that was sticking to my scissors, so that was annoying. But I was so excited that I found these red pipe cleaners in my stash because I feel like pipe cleaners just kind of scream, I don't know how old is vintage, but definitely screams like something from my childhood, from the 80s or 90s, but also older than that. I am not, by the way, saying the 80s and 90s is vintage. Maybe it is now, but I still think of like maybe 50s and 60s. But regardless, I thought that this pipe cleaner, or maybe they're called chenille stems, but when I was a kid, we called them pipe cleaners. I thought this was the perfect touch for this. So I'm just haggling that around the edge, just kind of holds the vinyl down a little bit, and it gives a nice border. It covers up the edge of the lid. I just thought it was a great little touch. So we're going to embellish. This is another tree like from Dollar Tree that I had previously cut the back of it off or something so it lays more flat. And then I am carefully cutting off a part of the tip too, but covering it with my hand so it doesn't go flying, and you don't want little pieces of metal to go flying in the air. And I'm just putting on a good amount of hot glue here and laying this down. I accidentally dropped it. We're going to straighten it out, and then I'm just going to wipe my finger. The glue's cooled a little bit, and wiping it off of that sparkly vinyl. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. What do you think of when you hear the word vintage? I feel like there's so many definitions online of vintage. So maybe none of you think that any of this looks vintagey, but I do. So I was out of cotton balls, so I just had a white pom-pom in my stash, and so I just cut that up and it kind of turned into cotton ball material. And we're just going to glue chunks of that here for a little bit of snow. Even the gold, see how the vinyl's like wrinkling on the edges? That doesn't even bother me. I just feel like it adds to the vintage feel. So I'm going to take a little piece of this pipe cleaner and twist it up to make a little hanger as well. And this one was so fun. I decided to hold this up in the air at least so you could see it better. Again, no tree to display my ornaments on at this point, but I thought this one was super fun and so many different variations, little figurines that you could also glue on here. I love it. All right, up next we have a mason jar ring, and it's big. It doesn't go in any of my jars, and I don't have like the middle part for it. So it's been in my kitchen cupboard forever, and we're moving, and I was packing things up, and I was like, I have no use for this. So into the stash it goes. But we're going to use one of these red bells, again, from my stash, but you can get them at Dollar Tree, Dollar General, Hobby Lobby, Walmart. Very inexpensive I have a pack of them. And we're just gonna get it a little bit dirty with some brown paint. And then I'm threading through with this gold. This actually, I think, came with the bells. So it's kind of, I normally wouldn't use it, but it's a little bit gaudy. Maybe this isn't super gaudy, but tying that on, tied a little loop at the top. I wanted to show you this mason jar ring. Already looks a little rusty. It's got some flaking or some rust on it. And so I didn't want to do anything to that. And now I'm tying the knot a little bit lower because I was trying to decide how low I wanted this bell hanging from the middle of the ring, and I wanted the knot to be, where the glue was. So I fussed with that, and I burnt myself, I think, again there. I just grabbed a tool to elevate the little ring to make this easier to attach this, and then use my little metal pick to hold that in there while the glue hardened, and then trimmed that down. So that is the basis for the ornament. But now we're going to take another pipe cleaner, and I did string this through the string thread it through the string where the bell was to add additional ability to like hold it up there, and twisted it, and then twisted it again at the top and trimmed it down, and that's going to be our little hanger. And I decided to add a little bit more of embellishment. Well, not more, there really wasn't any. Add a little bit of embellishment for this one. And once more using some greenery scraps, and I just took a couple short pieces and twisted them together kind of like in an X, just because I thought it'd be easier to attach them this way up at the top. And I also had these little plastic pine cones, which plastic is, to me, screams vintage. So again, I don't normally use this type of thing. I don't know where these plastic pine cones came from, probably off of a piece from Dollar Tree that I had redone, and I just saved the pine cones, and I hot glued this to the top. And I love how this one came out. Again, pretty simple, but has a lot of old things in it. So it just gave that old vintagey feel to me. For this next one, I'm starting off kind of at the end, but I have this white sparkly ribbon from Dollar Tree, and I didn't have any ribbon that really worked well for the project I was about to make. So I'm using this, I'm cutting it in half because I needed a thinner ribbon, and then it's sparkly and it sheds like crazy. So I'm Mod Podging it, and I have a little plastic mat here, and I'm just gonna do that and then let it dry, and we'll come back to it later. But I just thought I'd share this with you because I'm really trying to just use what I have. Like I said, we're moving, and I'm just trying to use up the things that I have on hand already. So that's drying. We're gonna move on to these Christmas light bulbs, old school. I bought them at a rummage sale years ago. I actually used to have a ton of them, and I got rid of a lot of them before I moved this last time, or this previous time. I don't know when I moved. But I had a few left, and I wanted to make some fun ornaments. I've used these before for other ornaments, but I didn't want to paint the bulb itself because I wanted it to just look, those are like the old colors that were used. You don't see all of that in lights anymore. So anyway, I'm using a little piece of twine. I hot glued that on the metal piece at the top of the light bulb, and then I'm just going to use a little bit of hot glue and wrap that twine around. And that also helps secure the sides that I initially glued down. as well. And then if you need to, you can put a little bit more hot glue at the top to hold down the end of the twine. And we're just going to do that on all three of these. Obviously do as many of them as you want, but I decided to do all three. So I'm making a little bow. I wanted a very simple bow, and I saw an image somewhere with a bow like this, and I just thought it looked cool and old. I thought this ribbon would be hard to tie because of just the sparkle, even though I Mod Podged it, just the material of it. So I am just making basically two sides of a bow. I'm making a little loop, I'm gluing it down, and this also keeps all of the front, because this is not a double-sided ribbon. And so I just made a couple of loops, and then I'm hot gluing them across the center and just cut the tail of the bow at an angle. This is a very simple bow here, but I'm gonna hot glue that onto the twine, and I really liked it. I liked the old, I don't know, something about it just screamed old to me, but I love this little set of ornaments. I cannot wait to put these on my tree. They will be going on my tree, but let me know what you guys think of these and if you would make something similar. And let me know down in the comments which one of these is your favorite. To start off, I'm using this sign that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. It was originally part of their classroom decor, and I got it on clearance for a 90% off. So I love looking at Hobby Lobby's clearance section, and this gave me a great base for a sign to work with. So all I'm doing is sanding down the front here just to dull it down, make the paint adhere, but also not need as many coats of paint by just getting rid of some of this color. So I'm just going to give that a pretty good sanding. I didn't go nuts with it, but I did do a pretty good sanding, and then tap off the dust, clean that up with I think that was probably just like a damp paper towel, and then I did let that dry, and then we gave it a good coat of white chalk paint by Waverly. I think it's Snow White. I know I just showed it, but I already don't remember what it was, but just white. Chalk paint definitely covers a lot better than acrylic paint. I went on slow here at first because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do full coverage. I was showing you, I had a wild hair on the paintbrush that kept putting little streaks on my frame, and I really wanted to keep the wood frame as is. So anyways, I just trimmed that off. But I gave this a good coat of paint, and then I have this beaded garland. This was originally from Walmart. This was in my stash. I picked it up on clearance after Christmas, so I don't remember what I paid for it, but it was at least 75% off, and I got myself a lot of beads. So we are going to I cut off the tassel, we'll save that, and I'm going to pull off the beads. But this is a great way to do it if you find a really good deal on a beaded garland, and you can have some beads in your stash. But you can buy wood beads online in pretty much any craft store. So at first I thought I wanted to use the small beads, and I'm trying to design a Christmas tree. So I'm just showing you, I realized this one's getting a little too wide. So I tried double stacking each layer, being this 2 in a row with the same amount of beads, and that gave me a narrower tree, and I liked that better. But then I decided I was going to just try and use the large beads from the garland, and I liked that best, and it fit on my sign really well. So yeah, I was just kind of holding my sign over it. So just wanted to show you a little bit of the process. You know, you're going to be using slightly different items than I'm using if you recreate this, so just thought I would share that. Now, previously I had mixed up some green paint for a project, and this is what I had done with it to preserve it. This was probably 2 weeks prior, so just wanted to share that. You can cover it with plastic wrap, or I slid the plate in a plastic bag, and you can see the paint is not all dried up. So that was handy, and it was already in a bag. So I'm going to just coat my beads with paint this way. There are lots of ways of painting beads, but this is how I chose to do it. So I am just going to mix them up in there. Now, I'm going to show you how mine came out, and you can decide if you want to do it the same way or not. So I'm rolling them around, getting them coated really well. And then because I am working in a makeshift craft space, well, it is my mom's craft space, but I don't have all of my normal things because we're preparing to move. I was just looking at what I had, and I was like, oh, well, I have this box here that I just pulled these beads out of. So I took the insert and I was taping it because I didn't want to get paint anywhere. But a box lid works really, really good for what we're going to do here, but I didn't have one handy. So once again, working with what we've got. So I'm very carefully as to not get paint all over Mom. I did not get paint on your walls or your carpet. I just toss the beads in there and roll them around. Now this helps take off any clumps of paint so it's not gobbed on there and dries funky. So I did that, and then I just let this box dry. But rolling them around in a box lid also works really well. Now, these ended up being a little bit spotty where you could see a little bit of the wood bead, but I liked that look. So you do it how you like it. So this is another day. They're all drying, but I was trying to figure out, or they're all dried, I should say, because it does not take a couple days to dry. I was trying to figure out placement of my tree, so I was deciding on a trunk. This is just one of those wood pieces from the Dollar Tree. I also ended up not using the star, but I put the star at the top. I was just trying to decide where I wanted the placement of the tree. So I tried really, really hard to keep this centered. So I'm going to glue them. I am going to glue them where the opening to the bead is on the side so that it's not as obvious. It's not as easily seen. So I'm just going to put a little bit of hot glue on each one and hold it down. I didn't want to do too much because you don't want it oozing out the sides or anything. And as I went along, after a couple rows, I realized it was going a little bit crooked. So I corrected it, and I also bumped into the camera, but I corrected it by just kind of slowly shifting the other row over a little bit. In the end, it looks great, but just keep an eye on it because as much as I tried to keep it centered going straight down, not all of the beads are exactly perfect in their shape. So anyways, this is my finished tree. We're going to add on the little wood piece, which is perfect because it looks like the trunk of a tree. And again, I'm using some hot glue to attach that to the bottom. Now, I thought about using a star at the top, but overall, I just felt like it just didn't look right, and it kind of made it disproportionate in the way it looked on the sign. I decided to skip it, but that's how this one came out. You could hang this up or use it just as a shelf sitter or a leaner sign, I think is what people call them. I love this one so much. I think this is going to be a great layering piece. It's simple, but it's very Christmassy or wintry. You can just leave it out for all of winter. This DIY is just going to be using a scrap piece of wood. I am sanding it down to smooth it out a little bit, but it's not going to be a perfectly smooth piece of wood. It's okay to use your scraps. I did try to round out the corners a little bit, each of the corners, and the top and bottom, really just to make sure paint went on a little bit easier, but it does not need to be perfect. And then we're going to give this just one solid coat of white paint, maybe 2 coats if you're using acrylic paint. But I've seen so many little ideas like this. So we're going to make a little snowman. Once that paint is all dry, we're going to go ahead and make our little snowman face. You don't have to be an artist for this. I'm using you'll be able to tell, obviously, I am not an artist. The end of a paintbrush to do the eyes and the mouth. And it was a little bit too small, so I kind of doubled back over it. And then they weren't perfect circles. It's all right. A little dotting tool that I have from Dollar Tree might have also been helpful. But if you want to try to get creative with your snowman face, go ahead and look on Pinterest or something for just snowman faces. Get some ideas. And then I'm using a small paintbrush to make my little carrot nose. The first one I had was not pointy enough, so it was hard to make my pointed carrot nose. But I just did it off to the side, just keeping the snowman face really simple. Let's not overcomplicate this. As it was, I kind of overcomplicated the eyes. At some point, you try to fix it too much, you can ruin it. So just let it be. Now, for our hanger, we're going to make this into a little ornament. I'm just taking this really thick rope, and we're going to tie that into a knot and trim that down. Then I'm going to take that knot and put a good, healthy amount of hot glue and just put that right on the top. And I'm going to hold that until that glue really sets up. You could also drill something in if you want, but I just was going to keep this one pretty simple. I propped my snowman face up on some scissors just to give me a better angle for looking at it without getting my head in the way. And I'm just trimming down some scrap pieces of greenery and berries. I keep all of the scraps in little bags, and we're going to use some tweezers to help us apply the little berries. But I just wanted to do a little embellishment on the snowman. I thought the greenery and the berries was cute, and this is really simple, very quick and easy to make. Would be a fun one to do with kids or just some girlfriends around, or just by yourself, whatever. But I love this one. Let me know what you think about this sweet little ornament. I think this one was really fun to make and very easy. This was another Hobby Lobby clearance find from St. Patrick's Day. I can't see the original price, but It was not much. So we're going to once again sand this down, make it easier to cover the green up. But I saw this and was like, well, this would be a cute little ornament. But I actually didn't make mine necessarily to be an ornament. It could also just be a little sign. It'd be cute on like a tiered tray. You don't have to even use the hanger. But we're going to sand it, wipe it down, and then I'm using my heat gun on the back to just take off these stickers. The heat gun just helps loosen up the adhesive, and it comes up super easy when you do it like this. Now I'm going to give this whole thing a coat of white paint. I am emphasizing on the frame because we are going to cover the center part, but I did end up putting some paint down there too, just to make sure if what we're covering with didn't go all the way to the edges or something. I didn't want any of the green popping through. If you are new to my channel, welcome. I enjoy sharing budget-friendly DIYs with you here on this channel. Please consider subscribing to my channel before you leave so you don't miss out on my future ones. All right, so now we are going to cut down, well, I'm going to cut it, I'm going to rip it. I'm using this scrapbook paper. This is from Hobby Lobby, from one of those like smaller packs, and I was I knew there was a part like that I knew which portion of the paper I wanted to be using. So I'm just folding it back and forth so that I can get a nice tear to it. And then I do end up using scissors for the rest of it, however you want to do it, but you got to get it down to the right size to fit in the center square. I'm just using my fingernail to crease it, and then I will trim it with my scissors, which I was a little nervous about because I feel like I never get it straight. Even, I don't know. It was fine. It was totally fine. It fit in there nicely. Pop that out, and we're going to go in there with some Mod Podge and put that in there. So this is a thicker paper. It did not have any wrinkling, no worry whatsoever there. But I'm just going to give a good coat of Mod Podge and place that down into the center. I am using this little squeegee tool. This is from Plaid, and this is very, very handy. I'm kind of wiping off the excess Mod Podge that comes out as I scrape it, but this gets in the corners to make sure it's attached really, really well, and it works great. And then I have this little green sticker. Well, I pulled the sticker piece off of it, but this is a wood piece from Dollar Tree, and I loved the brightness of this, the sparkle. I just felt like it was a good contrast, but you can put whatever you want. You could paint that if you have something like that and it's just too bright for you, but I loved it. I thought this sign was so cute, so sweet, and very simple. And whether you hang it on a tree, on a little, peg or something, or just use it as a little sign. For this DIY, I'm starting out with a picture frame that I picked up at a thrift store for $1. You can pick them up obviously anywhere, or use one that you have laying around the house that maybe you're not using anymore. But I find them all the time at the thrift store, and often still wrapped in plastic and everything. But this one was in good shape. I like that it was a thicker frame. Anyways, we're just using that for our base of the DIY, I suppose. Right now, as you see, I am cutting out a Christmas tree. I'm just using a piece of computer paper to make a template, and I'm doing grade school style here. Well, I was having a hard time figuring out which angle to cut it, but just where you fold the paper in half, and then you only have to draw out one side, and it will be the same on both sides. So I just needed a Christmas tree template. You could also print one off, just off of the internet. And I'm needing it to fit. I'm using this cardboard piece from the frame just as my guide for how big it needs to be. So I was just trimming it down until it fit on the cardboard piece. And then we're just using this as our template to trace it onto something else. So, all right, yeah. So, okay, I decided to use this fabric that I think I picked up from the Dollar Tree. And once again, I folded it in half and am cutting it out this way. So this was a little tricky. It would have been easier if I had my pins to pin the paper to the fabric. I probably should have just borrowed some from my mom because I was crafting at her house, and that would have been easier. But it's okay. I made it work, and we have ourselves a little plaid Christmas tree. And then I wanted a backing for it, and I decided to just use some fabric. This is, I think, a muslin fabric. Sorry, I have a little bit of a cold right now. So I'm just going to glue this onto the cardboard piece, but you could always just paint the back of the frame, or you could just put a piece of cardstock. But I wanted this texture, even though it's going to be behind glass, you can still see the texture through it. And so I'm just going to hot glue this around, pulling it pulling it tight. If you have a pattern fabric, just be careful when pulling it tight because you don't want to shift the pattern. And then I'm just going to use a tiny bit of hot glue here. I'm not worried about like gluing down every little corner because this is going to be behind glass, but I didn't want this to shift on me. So just a little bit of hot glue. I didn't want to do like anything too thick because I didn't want it to bubble up. And this isn't a perfect Christmas tree, but I like it. And this is a really super simple little DIY, and I'm just going to clean the glass, and then I'm going to put this back in and put the back on our frame. And that is it for this one. I love how this came out. There's so many different colors and patterns, obviously, that you can do. You could also paint the frame if you wanted another pop of color, but I really liked this one and thought it was fun. Let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. I love making Christmas ornaments, so I thought I'd throw another one in this video for you. So I have two wood slice pieces. One has a hole in it and one does not. The one without a hole, I'm not sure where it came from. I think maybe a friend gave it to me. The one with a hole in it came from a pack from Hobby Lobby, I believe. The one was a little bit rough, so I sanded it down just a little bit to make the paint get on there better. And I'm going to do my best with a small paintbrush to paint the center of both of these. Now, if you have both of them that have holes in them, that'll be fine because you'll end up kind of covering that area up anyway. But I just have two, one that's slightly larger than the other because we're going to make ourselves a little snowman ornament. It might have been easier to take the string off, but I didn't, so I just painted around it. Then once those were both dry, I'm going in to paint my little snowman face. I'm using the end of a paintbrush and then the tip of a paintbrush to do the nose. I don't know if this is always the easiest way. I don't get perfect circles. You can do whatever you want. I realized afterwards my dotting tool may have worked better for this, and then I tried to clean up a little mess up, and then I ended up making it worse. But it's okay. You can always repaint. And I do. I end up cleaning that up. And then I'm just using a small tipped paintbrush to do the orange carrot nose. I'm just using some simple acrylic paints for these. Nothing fancy whatsoever. And you can see our little snowman is coming together. I thought the buttons were a little too small, so I went back and then I was like, you need to just stop before you mess it. So I did. Didn't want to mess it up. So I'm flipping my snowman over and I'm cutting some popsicle sticks to attach this. Now, the one was slightly not as thick as the other, so I just doubled up the popsicle stick in one place and that made the difference, and this will help hold our two pieces together. Now, I realize it would have been easier if I had done this before painting on the face, because it ends up being slightly crooked, which is fine. It's not like snowmen are like perfectly symmetrical. I don't know if you grew up in a place where there was snow, but making a snowman perfectly symmetrical is just not really likely. But I would attach it together before painting on the face if I were to do this again. So now I'm just going to take some ribbon. You can also use a strip of fabric, whatever you want to use for our scarf. And I'm just putting a little bit of hot glue in place to like tie it on there, so to speak, because I'm not really tying it just because of the shape and everything. It wouldn't really stay put. So I'm just using a little dabs of hot glue here and there to crisscross it and then attach it to lay the way that I want to make our little scarf. And then I'm going to just cut some little angles on the end of the scarf. And that is it. You could add on a hat or add on something else if you wanted to, but I decided to keep it pretty simple here. And I think this is a really cute ornament. It's going to make a great addition to my Christmas tree. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you are new, and make sure your notification bell is turned on. We're going to have some great brand new DIYs coming to you soon. Also, leave me a comment down below. If you made it to the end, leave me that Christmas tree emoji to let me know that you did. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.